I gave students one-on-one feedback every single day for an entire month. Today I'm drinking Calf by Black Rifle Coffee Company. It has a nice smoky caramel aroma, a caustic bitterness, and a soft earthiness. I dig this coffee. It's not a coffee that is going to blow you away with too many flavors, which is kind of nice, and it's not a coffee that is going to taste extremely bitter or extremely acidic. It is a nice, balanced, simple coffee. For an entire month, I gave all of my students one-on-one feedback. Now, to clarify that, I did not give every single student feedback every single day. I think that's possible, but I think that you would lose a lot of other stuff in the process of trying to accomplish that. And while I am about trying new things on this channel and in my life and with my teaching practice, I also am not in the business of messing up my classroom culture, and I'm not in the business for doing things that are not best for kids. I'm really only interested in trying things that I think are best for kids. To clarify, I did not use a specific feedback method that you can see online or in various books, including SE2R by Mark Barnes. It's a great method. I think it's awesome, especially for teachers that are in language arts. Read this book, get some information about the SE2R method. But I did not use any of those methods. For my class, for my classes, I suppose, and for the content areas that I'm teaching right now this quarter, my method for the most part was 1, an encouragement, and 2, a challenge. That was really just it. And my encouragement, I really went for a parental point of view. So I wanted to encourage my students in a loving kind of way, focusing on character development, focusing on who they are as human beings rather than what they've accomplished in class. And then for the challenging element, I focused then in on an area of content that I wanted them to work harder on or go deeper with or try a new method for, that sort of thing. Now, the way that that all played out over the course of a month varied greatly, depending on the content area I was teaching, depending on how many students I had in the classroom, and depending on the activity they were doing. There was a wide variety. At the end of the video, I will tell you where I found my personal sweet spot in terms of the number of students based on the activity, in terms of kind of my method that I kind of developed over a course of time that helped me feel really comfortable and I felt like helped me make great connections with students. And we'll get to all that, but before that, let's go ahead and cut to what my learning looked like along the way. All right, so it's day 1 of giving students feedback, and I'm gonna have to explain how I'm gonna break this down essentially. So what I'm hoping to do is have one-on-one conferencing with students as much as humanly possible. But there are just going to be days where I cannot conference with all of my students because they need core instruction and there are other structures in a classroom that belong. So I can't completely flip my classroom just for this one thing. So what I'm doing is at the very least, once students get into work time, I'm going around and sitting with the students and just kind of talking through some things that I love that I see and some things that I would like to encourage them to improve in. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I will have full-on one-on-one conferences with as many students as I can. That is my goal, and I'm doing it every single class. So at the very least, I will every single class, started today. Every single class at the very least, I am spending some time just going through and giving students specific feedback. And what I already love about it is I'm having the conversations that teachers love to have. Like, it feels great to sit down with a student and say, wow, that is really awesome. I really love how you did this. And by giving students some choice in what they do with their activities, there's always some part of the student connected to what they're creating to show what they're learning. And because there's always something that's connected to who that student is as a human being, there's always something I can tap into that is unique. And so I am genuinely excited when I say it. I'm not just faking it and trying to say, oh, that's awesome, but I've seen it a million times before. I'm looking for what are those unique things that I can point out. So after day one, I'm really liking the idea of having that one-on-one conversation with students and giving them feedback. And I'm looking forward to having some more time based on different lesson plans that I have coming up to actually sit down with them for a longer period of time, maybe 2 minutes even, and give them specific feedback based on all of the work that they've done and based on the work that they turn in. Tomorrow will be one of those days, so he'll hear back from me later. It is the end of week 2, and I'm looking back over how one-on-one feedback has gone this week. And I haven't been perfect, but what I'm taking away from this week is the importance of one-on-one feedback comes with the human connection that you have with another student. And I don't know about you, but in my classroom nowadays, most things are turned in online, and I'm grading them online and commenting on them online. And that human feedback can be lost if I don't make time for human connection. So something I've been doing is working with my students on their portfolios and talking through that with them in person, having that conversation, asking questions rather than just giving answers to find out what do my students actually think they're doing well and what do my students think that they need to improve on before I go and tell them, because it's awesome how most of them, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. My old roommate did this race called Ride the Divide, where you go from Banff, Canada, all the way down to Mexico. Look, it's right behind me. Perfect timing, right? And something that he talked about after going through this journey, around the time he was in Colorado, I believe, which is where we are, he was just longing for human connection. And the most difficult part of it was having long stretches of roads, doing this grueling, physically difficult achievement, but the hard part was doing it alone. And for having long stretches where he's just on his bike and he's just out there in the middle of nowhere on mountain roads and trails by himself, that was the part that he found hard. That shouldn't surprise us, right? That should be pretty obvious to us. I think the challenge that I'm taking away from this feedback is this: what's easiest isn't always better. We know that to be true, of course, but when I think about grading my students and giving them feedback, what's easiest is sitting on my couch at home, taking notes on the work they're doing and emailing it to them or attaching it to their assignment online. That's not what's best. It's useful, it's beneficial, it's meaningful, it's valuable. Don't throw it away. But my challenge for myself is, am I taking the time to meet with the students one-on-one and have a real interaction and connection over the work that they're doing? And the value that I put into the work by meeting with them in person is different than the value put into the work when I write a grade on a piece of paper or comment online and just say a couple words. It is week 4, doing one-on-one feedback with my students every single day. Obviously not all of them, but I'm doing my absolute best. And today I'm thinking about this guy. Mark Barnes wrote a book a while back now called Role Reversal, and it definitely challenges the idea of how we teach students and how students learn and ideas behind students guiding the learning process. It's an awesome book. You should read it even if you don't plan on implementing everything. There was a lot in this book that I found valuable, and I didn't use all of it, and I have tried most of it, but something that I really love that he talks about in this book, Role Reversal, is feedback. And this was something that wasn't new to me. It's not new to any educator. You can't really become a teacher without thinking about feedback, but he really challenged the way that I thought about how deep I went with my feedback. And so this book was sticking out to me in my mind this week as I have been giving feedback to students and just thinking of the value of real, deep feedback. How do you give feedback to students? And what is the process that you use to give feedback to your students? Do you just write things down that come to mind? Or do you have specific things that you're looking for that you are pointing out to your students? And how do you give that feedback to your student? Is it commented on something that they did? Is it written on the bottom of a page? Or is it with a human connection? As I'm giving students feedback, I love that I'm able to do it word for word. I'm just the kind of person that I can't really, it takes a lot of work to break things down into a few words, right? I do a much better job if they can see my face as I tell them what I think about their work. And then when I have to give constructive criticism, it can come from my heart and from a place where I feel like I can better communicate how I actually feel about the work that they've done. And so that I don't want them leaving, reading the work and just taking negative thoughts away from it. I want them to see the value of the learning process, and failure is a part of the learning process. It's necessary. It's super, super valuable. So I really want to communicate that to my students, and I feel in one-on-one interactions with students, I can communicate that much better than by leaving a comment or something like that. All necessary things. Sometimes we have to give feedback that way, but it's awesome when we can sit down with students, even if it's only 10 minutes during class, grabbing 5 students maybe, and just having that one-on-one connection. What an awesome experience. I started off just meeting with students and kind of not planning what I was going to say and just talking through what their content looked like, asking them leading questions, that sort of thing. And that was all very, very good. There's nothing wrong with that. I still do the leading questions, especially when it comes to the challenge. But let's talk first about the encouragement. So the encouragement for the student really came down to how I imagined a parent would see a child that they love accomplishing stuff. So I really was aiming at soft skills, character traits, the types of things that will point to who that student is as a human being, not just the things that they've accomplished in my class. And then on the challenging side of things, I often asked them if I thought that it was the right time to do that. I would ask them what they thought they could do to improve in either their portfolio, which is what they use to keep track of what they're learning, or what they thought they could improve on with a score from a quiz or things like that. Whether or not they were able to come up with a challenge on their own, I challenged them in one area, just one thing to focus on. And part of that came back to a principal that I had 5 years ago, who really taught me the value of the value of one critique, one challenge, one thing that students leave knowing that they're supposed to work on. Let's talk about sweet spots though, because one of the biggest challenges here was, how many students do I meet with every single day? I value feedback. I want to give students feedback every day for the most part, and I did that for the most part. But what about how many students to do and what type of activity or time to do it during? When I'm meeting with students, essentially my sweet spot was when I had groups that were more structured. They're sitting in their assigned seats, they're working from their chairs, that sort of thing. I was able to meet with probably 8 to 12 and still be able to roam around the room in between each meeting to make sure that I'm helping students remember to stay on task and remember to stay focused and to keep working and not give up. And then that also helps because when students want to ask for help or ask questions, they know when I'm meeting with a student to wait patiently, and then when I'm walking around the room, they can raise their hand and get my attention. When I had students doing projects that were more collaborative by nature and they were maybe moving around the room more, I was not able to do more than 5 without feeling like it was taking away either from my classroom management or from the learning of my students who need help. So in those types of scenarios, I found my sweet spot to be about 5 students a day. I did not want to do more than 5 students during an activity where students were all around the room, because I really wanted to make sure that I was able to roam throughout the room and spend some time in each of the groups and encourage that collaborative process. So that is my story. I'm curious what yours is. I'm curious how it would work for you. I don't think my particular method is probably meant below a middle school age, but there are tons of excellent articles and books out there about feedback and the importance of student feedback for all grades. So I challenge you to give feedback a try. Let me know in the comments below how it went.